Tensions between China and Britain look set to escalate again. The UK's next move is expected to be an end to its extradition treaty with Hong Kong in response to China's national security law in Hong Kong. And China has urged London to avoid further damaging relations. And for more, we're speaking to Raffaello Pantucci, Senior Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute. Raffaello, thanks for joining us this evening. First up, what are the implications of the UK ending its extradition treaty with Hong Kong? Now, who would be most affected by this?
Well, frankly, criminals. The point of an extradition law between two countries is that individuals who are wanted in the other one for criminal acts in that one would be extradited to it. And usually this process exists between two countries that have kind of legal systems that recognize each other and accept that, each other are of a standard that, means that if a request for extradition comes from the other country, it's not outside the realm of normality for them to see this person as guilty, or at least in enough of a position to stand trial, and then to send them to that other country. The decision by the UK to suspend its one with Hong Kong, and Hong Kong, of course, it had one with Hong Kong rather than the rest of China, because, of course, Hong Kong, after being a British protectorate for a long period of time, still having the strong connection to the United Kingdom, was operating under essentially the British law. So it made sense for the two to have an extradition law between each other. Now, with the arrival of this, the new national security law being pushed down by Beijing, that somewhat changes the role of the judiciary and the judiciary in Hong Kong, and that means the UK is now reacting to that.
And how do you think China is likely to then respond to this latest move?
Well, it's quite interesting because we've heard a lot of noise from Beijing about anger towards what the United Kingdom is doing. We saw a lot of anger after the UK announced it was going to extend, potentially citizen rights to, the almost 3 million BNO holders, British nationality document holders that you had in Hong Kong. And we saw a lot of anger out of Beijing as well after in the run-up to the Huawei decision and then subsequent to it. But we haven't actually seen what Beijing is going to do to punish London in this way, though we've heard a lot of noise about Beijing threatening to do something.
Do you think the UK will follow in America's footsteps to then further impose sanctions on Beijing?
I think that's an interesting question. I think we're seeing a discussion in the United Kingdom at the moment that is going down the path following what we've seen already happen in the United States, where we've seen sanctions extended to individual members of the CCP who are linked directly to human rights abuses in Xinjiang. And it's possible that we'll see the United Kingdom going down the same route as well. We're certainly seeing a lot of discussion around about that. And we saw the UK push out a whole series of sanctions orders against other individuals linked to Saudi Arabia, to Russia, to Iran in the past week, but we haven't seen anything to China yet. So it's possible that we'll see the UK going down that path of trying to target some individuals for sanction in this way. But to be 100% honest, I'm not sure what kind of an impact that is going to actually have on these individuals that, frankly, the US sanctions wouldn't have already had.
And do you think the latest tensions will affect the UK's ability to negotiate a post-Brexit trade deal with China?
I'm almost certain that it will have political reverberations onto trade agreements and other deal negotiations. We've seen historically that the way Beijing has expressed its anger is basically putting people in this political deep freeze. We've seen attempts at economic swipes back at people who attack Beijing, and those Beijing still uses them, but they tend actually to backfire on Beijing when they try to deploy them. So it's not clear that that would actually be a benefit to them. And ultimately, if you from Beijing's perspective, the UK is still an attractive market to want to try to invest in. Now, there's a series of legislation that's potentially coming down the pipeline in terms of looking more closely at foreign investments into the United Kingdom, and that would undoubtedly end up falling on Chinese companies that were trying to get into the UK. But there's still quite a strong economic relationship between the United Kingdom and China, and it's one that does, play to Beijing's advantages. This isn't like, the Australian relationship, for example, which is one very much based on selling products to Beijing. The UK one is actually quite, it goes in both directions. The Chinese get a lot of technology and a lot of development and management experience and services that, frankly, they need from the United Kingdom that helps the sort of Chinese economy. And these are things they probably want to try to maintain. And even when we look at the sort of Huawei decision, Huawei is being slowly pushed out, but it hasn't been entirely pushed out. And there are still some big keynote investments that China has in the United Kingdom. And I think they want to try not to upset the apple cart to the point that, the UK really starts to go down the American route of talking about bifurcation and sort of essentially completely cutting off China. I also think from London's perspective, there's a desire to try to maintain some sort of a relationship with China. I think the political narrative and the rhetoric has gotten very heated of late, but there's still a recognition that even at the end of this, China is going to be a big feature of the global economy and the planet, and we're going to have to work with them in some way.
Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts with us this evening. Raffaello Pantucci, Senior Associate Fellow at the Royal United Services Institute.